Before the following presentation is about to begin, I just want to inform you that this video is sponsored by KindMaster. It's so good, I'm even using it right now. Wallace and Gromit, some of the most beloved animated icons worldwide. I've always adored these shorts as well as their feature outing, which we'll get to later, but I've never looked at them through a critical perspective, properly, and that's why I've always thought of this as an ambitious project to cover, as it's probably some of the most simple narrative structures of all time, with the gags reduced down to...
I don't know, lad. It's like no cheese I've ever tasted.
And I think I now know what makes them so endearing. Minimalism. In A Grand Day Out, the charm simply comes from the distinctive writing where the basic nature brings humour in a mixture of Peter Salus's quirky delivery of Wallace, bringing us a hilarious supply of lines and iconic character traits that cement themselves in your mind, and a really subversive and unique style compared to a lot of things, in that the way the story is told is so easy to understand through how the story presents itself. Whether you love or hate this style, you can't say it's forgettable. It's honestly some of the most subtle and interpretive comedy in all of cinema history, because it gives us something that not many other comedies could, the toying with dialogue of just regular life, regular behaviour, which honestly makes the franchise so much more memorable and unique than if Wallace just told us he liked cheese or wanted to build a rocket directly to us. It's all done visually and it's never forced, and even when the script is very easy to understand, it's all done with the thought and inspiration from Northern English stereotypes, never lazy or just to contextualise something for the audience. And the visual comedy is also superb, in that emotion can be expressed through the tiniest of gestures. The animation is impressive in this way, as Gromit, for example, never says a word, and instead, Nick Park made use of his facial features, particularly in his eyebrows, to express his emotions to us, really celebrating what animation can really do with very little, which really tells us how smart Nick Park managed to make use of the very little resources he had for the majority of this film's production, all on his own. The story is simple, but also refreshing with this natural, fluid style of the simple things that make us laugh. No metaphor, no complex themes, just a man and his dog who go to the moon to collect some cheese. Simple as that. It reflects such a British aesthetic in communication, basing the style on just your average Northern English town and how they would act in the past. Even down to the score, it just feels so nostalgic, which is probably why it connects with the UK and even in other countries so much. And while complex works also deserve great respect in pioneering in various arts, this minimalistic, to the point, unpretentious approach is always a breath of fresh air to come back to. And then we get to The Wrong Trousers. This has always been my favourite of the four shorts. It plays with your expectations of what you'd naturally come to expect, but also reminds you of the tone it's set in A Grand Day Out. Instead of the simplicity of the previous instalment, though, they challenge the audience with a completely fresh take on the franchise by a superb use of suspense. Nick Park himself even talks about his influences, like Alfred Hitchcock when talking about making this. Feathers is such a convincing villain as well, acting menacingly in his gestures, but also being such a Wallace and Gromit figure, if you know what I mean, by casting a penguin as the villain. A penguin! Everything in this film is just so subversive. The visual storytelling is superb, expertly creating suspense on the story with Gromit's investigation of Feathers' plan, told for a good portion of the runtime, and without any dialogue. And it also develops the duo's individual personalities. Wallace is the well-intentioned but clueless victim, unaware of what's really going on, and Gromit is the more inquisitive, suspicious type, not settling until he's satisfied with his findings. Wallace and Gromit as characters really wouldn't be the same without this short. And then there's the ending, an ingenious sequence where suspenseful elements are used to their best advantages in a rollicking chase. except it's all done on a toy train, laced with small visual gags. It defines all the instantly identifiable traits of Wallace and Gromit's comedic skill, as well as adding the subversive element of thrills, executed far, far more ambitiously and with far more effort than you could ever expect from the duo. If you're going to watch one of these shorts, make it this one. The third short, A Close Shave, was a highly satisfying finale to conclude this series. It took the minimalistic style of A Grand Day Out and the epic dramatic elements of The Wrong Trousers and acts as a perfect middle ground of the two, and blended them well, refreshingly so. I guess I could say that they could have been a little more ambitious and got even further in giving the audience something unexpected like The Wrong Trousers did, but maybe that's just me setting the bar a little too high. I think the art of this style of slapstick was definitely perfected here. I guess the animation is the most polished it had been up until then, so it makes a lot of sense. And the element of giving Wallace a romantic opponent is very well done, not only giving us something new, but letting the two embrace the great writing techniques in an again refreshing manner, as Wendelin was basically the female equivalent of Wallace. With this simple vocal range, literal hence charming logic, and the fact that we as an audience can now have someone else who can bounce off against Wallace more naturally, emphasising the world-building elements. Preston, while easy to spot the echoes of feathers in his personality, also works in moving the plot forward. The story, from Gromit getting sentenced to prison, which makes us realise the lovable connection the two have together, creating that dramatic core, and how Wendelin connects there as well, the well thought out climax which was ambitiously different, but not to the point of losing the spirit established before, to the inconspicuous end with comedy sprinkled in, with a lovingly mundane point to end on. After all, they'd never get on if she didn't like cheese. A Close Shave topped off the Marvellous trilogy by just doing what Wallace and Gromit do best.